Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Whole Perspective. I'm Kevin Delory, as always, joined by Kenny Phillips, Senior Vice President of Wholesale Lending for Equity Prime. Today, we have a very special guest, Michelle Dugan, who I just got to meet this week at the Vision 2020 Summit, which I am happy to say I was so surprised how amazing it was. It was great. I thought Les Brown, I'd never heard of him before, was absolutely amazing. But we're excited to have Michelle, on the podcast today. Before Kenny introduces her, I just want to say I thank you. You have increased my vocabulary, Michelle. Resting business face. Thank you for that one. I like
Love
that.
it. Yeah.
Papapreneur. I like that one. I like that one. Kenny, I'll explain to you what that is later. But my favorite is WTF. And it's not what you think, it's what the FICO. So that is my new favorite saying. You'll hear me say it a lot going forward. But without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Kenny to give you a little background on Michelle.
Absolutely. I agree. What a great time at the 2020 Women's Summit. Congratulations, Michelle. You was one of the award winners, so congratulations to you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Let me get a little bit of the background. Michelle Dugan is based out of Madison, Mississippi, right outside Jackson. She's the owner of MS Lending LLC, which is the #1 mortgage broker in Mississippi. She's involved in Association of Independent Mortgage Brokers, which is AIME. Experts, which is AIME, serving as the chair of the Education Experts Committee. She has been named a top 20 mortgage professional in 2020 by Yahoo Finance and a multi-year recipient of what I just talked about, Women with Vision Award. Michelle is also an active member of Vetted VA and especially passionate about working with veteran mortgage brokers. So welcome to the podcast, Michelle.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, y'all, for having me.
One thing I learned about you, Michelle, and this is something that I've really been able to open up about, since I've been doing this podcast, even talking with Christine and hearing her background. Christine Beckwith shared a lot about how she was raised. And, every podcast I learn more and more about people. And it's something I've never been able to do. I've never really opened up to people see me today. Oh, you're successful. You've been this title, that title, but not realizing my background. And, I heard you say one thing, on one of your podcasts, and that was, that you wish you would have been more vulnerable and share more about your past. Because I think when you do that, people start to see, I could do it. Like hearing Les Brown, like anything is possible. So yeah, you went through the, some difficult times when you were younger. But look where you are today. And that's something I've always hidden. I've never talked about, being raised by a single mom, 4 brothers, 2 of them were in and out of jail. I lost 2 of them in the last 3 years. So people see fancy Kevin and he's well put together. But my journey hasn't always been easy. It's been full of some bumps and some bruises. But I'm happy to say today I'm in a great place with I have one daughter, Brooklyn, who's an amazing daughter. I have my wife who's, very supportive of me. So when I see you, I see this whole well put together person. You're up there getting this award. Like Kenny said, Jennifer said, you're all fancy in this dress and I got this award. Tell us a little about your journey to get where you are today, because this podcast has allowed me to share more. And I think after hearing like Les Brown, it's so important to share our stories with others so They can strive for the same thing. It might seem impossible today, but when they hear our story, they might say, I'm going to keep going forward and be successful.
Yeah. So, I think there's a lot of dimensions to my story. And it's the same thing. People might see me today and I look all polished and I have a super successful company and, life is great, but that is not what it's always looked like. I got married really young the first time. I've been through divorce. I was a single mom for a little bit. During my divorce, my credit got completely trashed. And, I had to climb back from not only from that, but I had to climb back from having a bank account that was essentially negative because I took on so much debt from my divorce and stuff. And so, there was definitely a time during that period where it's so hard to see, where I might be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But there were days, as I was going through all of that, which was probably one of the hardest times in my life, that I could not have imagined this. If someone had said, 15 years from now, you're going to be sitting in an office and it's going to be your company and you're going to be successful and you're going to be all these things, I would have laughed in their face and said, that's crazy. Like, thanks for, saying that, but there's no way that's going to be true. But I was at a point in my life where the only thing that I could do was put my head down and work hard and try to get out of it. There was nobody coming to save me. There was nobody coming to rescue me. And so where I am now, it's easy to look at me and say like, oh, she's successful, she's this and she's that. But because of the experiences that I've been through, I'm able to connect with so many more of my borrowers. They call me, and sometimes people are nervous. They don't want you to check their credit. They're like, oh, I've made some really, poor financial decisions. And I'm like, it's okay. Like I've done the same thing. And just because where you are today, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to buy a house. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to move forward or, make changes for your family based on where you are. And so I love that I'm able to connect to, with people on that level, and that I can relate to them and try to instill a little bit of hope in them that, there are better days coming. And, I think that's, as a human, like that's just what we have to do sometimes when we get into those places. And so, I did exactly what I needed to do. I put my head down, I worked really hard, and it was not just this, uphill path to where I am today. Even after getting back into mortgage origination in 2013, I still went through some tough times. I had 2 kids. I remarried, adore my family, but I went through postpartum depression, and it was something that I held inside and I didn't share with many people, but it affects every aspect of your life. So not only did it affect me at work and my performance there, I would wake up and I wasn't happy, but everything around me said, you should be happy. You have a great career. You have this great family. So yeah, it's not always been an easy ride, but I love where I've ended up, thankfully.
You know what's great with the show? Everyone thinks it's about mortgages. And when we start talking and we have conversations like this about our struggles and how we get through them, it's really about how do you become successful. But I'll tell you one thing that I did hear you say that I would have said I've never said this to anyone because I hate referring people to get a mortgage because it's always your fault if it doesn't go right. But I'll tell you the number one reason why I would refer someone to you. And you said this, I don't even know if you realized what you said. And you had said on our podcast that if somebody pays rent for $1,200 a month now, doesn't mean they should be in a mortgage for $1,200 a month. And I never thought of it that way. It's you qualify for what you qualify for, but not with you. So when you talk about really caring about customers, you have to, Michelle Dugan gets it. She has it because that comment, it totally changed my way of thinking. You're right, because when you rent, you have to, if the refrigerator goes, you call your landlord, you replace it. If the plumbing bursts, you call your landlord, you replace it. And you said just because somebody, pays $1,200 an hour doesn't mean they should have a $1,200 mortgage, because what if something goes wrong? And I want to put people in a position to be successful. So I'm going to talk mortgages for a second. We normally don't, but that was that powerful to me that I'm like, wait a second, maybe this is somebody I would refer my, cousin to, my aunt to, because, something you truly care. And it's something that Chris Gordon said on our second episode. He is a mortgage advisor. He's not a loan officer. He wants to advise people on what's best for them. And when you said that on that podcast, I was blown away. It never clicked in my brain that those things all happen. So that's a really great share. So anyone in the mortgage business that is listening, if you truly want repeat business and to be the number one in your state, that is something that you should be doing to every one of your clients.
Absolutely.
I agree. Well, and I think it's hard because you get these people in, and especially now with rates being higher and homes being more expensive, and they say that they're like, oh, well, I pay $1,500 a month in rent, so that's what I'm comfortable paying for my mortgage. But not that we go through and we scrutinize every single expense on a bank statement and things like that. But when you start looking at the numbers, and we know how we qualify borrowers, what they can qualify for, but aside from a VA loan, they're really not looking at what they have left over at the end of the month. And having been a homeowner, also having been a renter in the past, I know the difference in that. And it can be little things. It can be just taking care of your yard and having to buy a lawnmower and, make sure that you have enough funds left, put gas in it, and the time to be able to take care of your yard. There's so many things that go into homeownership besides just making that mortgage payment and then, building up equity. And so I never like to go in and just qualify somebody for the absolute max that they can qualify for, because one, it's going to make it just a tougher deal in the end to get done, because if you have any surprises, things can go sideways. But I like to really truly talk through things with them. Okay, this is what you're comfortable paying in rent, but how are you going to be able to put money back and, put money aside to save? Because, we're doing a USDA loan because we haven't saved up a bunch of money over time. And so, I like being able to help look at their expenses and really walk through that journey with them and help them understand that homeownership is so much more than just writing a check. And that just because this is what your payment is today, next year it's probably going to be a little bit higher because your insurance is going to go up, your taxes are going to go up, HOA dues may change, so just little things like that, and help open their mind up to that as well. That just because your apartment rent was the same for 4 years in a row, they came in and fixed your refrigerator when it broke. If you had a plumbing leak and you had a deductible that you needed to pay on insurance, you didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. Somebody else did that for you, but you've always got to have a little bit of a safety net there. I mean, in theory, it's better to have a lot of a safety net, but it's just not always possible for everybody in every walk of life. So, and just helping explain that just because where you start with your home is not where you're probably going to end up. Most people just don't keep a mortgage for more than 3 to 5 years these days. So, it's opening up their mind to, okay, this may not be my dream home that I'm moving into today, but it's a great home where I can build some equity and I can start to move up into those, bigger homes and things like that as I build my nest egg and as I have more savings and stuff. So I love walking through that part of the journey with people. And people ask all the time, like, oh, are you growing your business? Or, what are you trying to do? And on one hand, yes, I am. And we always hope that our business is going to continue to grow. But on the other hand, because I'm such a local community lender, I don't ever want to get so busy that I'm, removed from my borrowers in the way that I can't still connect with them on that level. One, because, with what I do with my borrowers, I have built a really strong, referral-based business from past clients and, people that I've worked with, and I don't ever want to lose that aspect of it. So there's, the balance, I guess, between how busy I want to be and then how much I truly love what I do and getting to help these people. It's kind of hard to maintain because I want to give every client the time that they need, and I want to make, all of my clients are not first-time home buyers, but for the ones that are and that are just kind of beginning their journey, I like to be able to walk through that part of it with them and know that they understand exactly what they're getting into and what it's going to look like, and that it's not always just rainbows and butterflies just because you get that home,
Wow. Interesting. Talk about about the transition back in 2000, I think it was 7 or 8, when you started thinking about opening up your own mortgage broker shop. You moved out to California, you came back, and you really took a leap of faith. You had to be a lawyer. Actually, that was one of your career goals, to be a lawyer. Yeah. You worked at a law firm. Talk about the transition from, hey, I don't want to be a lawyer. I'm actually going to stick to.
I'll add one thing, Kenny. The world doesn't need another attorney, but they do need a quality loan officer.
There you go.
And mortgage advisor. So I'm glad that we got a quality mortgage advisor versus another attorney.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. So I was actually working for a law firm while I was going through undergrad. I got accepted into law school, and literally right at the same time that I got accepted into law school, I had a fantastic scholarship. I found out that my ex-husband and I were going to be expecting our child. And so I was at a crossroads, and I was like, I don't think that I should be having a baby during my first year of law school and then trying to balance all of that. And kind of during this same time, one of the guys that I did a lot of work with at the law firm, he sent me a lot of his files and stuff. He was like, hey, you should come and, get your mortgage license. And I was like, why would I want to do that? I just refer them to you, and you take care of them and you do a great job. And I didn't know, I didn't know what that would look like as far as, from an origination standpoint and income and everything. And I was kind of terrified to make the leap because I'd always been a salary employee, and I had that, I knew exactly what was going to be coming in every month. And he kind of encouraged me just to take a leap of faith. And so what I did, I dipped my toe in the water, and I was doing it kind of part-time. And so instead of referring people to him, I would just originate their loans. And then I was still working at the law firm as well. And then once my son was born, literally during the time that I was on maternity leave with him, I decided just to go all in. And it was frightening because now not only was it just, me and my ex-husband, we also have this baby that we have to support. And so I didn't have any choice but to be successful because I had other mouths to feed now. And so that was when I kind of made that choice to go over. And even still in my mind, I was like, you know what, I'll do this for a year and then I'll start law school because I deferred everything. But once I got into it about 6 months in, law school was it was completely off the radar. I loved what I was doing, and I knew that law school would always be there, and that if I wanted to go back, I always could. And so I jumped into mortgages, absolutely loved it. I think your timeline that you were talking about, Kenny, was a little bit different from how life really kind of transpired. So I got into mortgages. I did that for about 2 years, and then I have a 2-year-old, and my family and my ex-husband's family, they were all out in California. So we decided, let's move out there so we can be closer to family while we have while our son is young. And so we moved back out there, and I was loving the mortgage business. I'd been really successful in Mississippi in my first 2 years. And so I go out there and I'm walking into these, mortgage companies, and I was like, hey, here's my resume. I'm moving out here. And I was in a mountain community, very small, a lot of vacation homes, second homes. And this was at the beginning of 2009. And so I would walk into these companies in California, and they just looked at me like, have you lost your mind? Nobody's hiring anybody in the mortgage industry in California. And I was like, what is going on? I'm really good at what I do. And I've got I've got years of experience from title and mortgage, and I couldn't get a job doing that because nobody was hiring, because it was a completely different landscape out there than what I had, been experiencing in Mississippi. So I got out, I was not back in the mortgage business for about 3.5 years or so. And I always stayed in touch with the broker that I had worked with in Mississippi. And so he's telling me about all the changes, and he's kind of keeping me up to date on everything. And he was like, you need to come home and just come back to work with me. Things are not like they were. And so I contemplated for a little bit. My ex-husband and I got divorced, got remarried to a guy that was from Alabama. My mom had moved back to the South at this point. And right after we got married, we found out we were going to have a baby. And I was like, you know what? We're going home. And he was like, we're going where? And I was like, we're going back to Mississippi. And I told him, I was like, I had a great career there. I'm going to go back into that. And of course, anytime that you take a break from the mortgage industry, there's always the rebuilding and all of that takes place and goes on. But he believed in me, and we moved home, and I got back into it, and I've been just kind of running ever since. And I worked for him for a few years. He sold the company. He had some life changes, decided to sell the company. That company that he sold to was a broker. Then they sold to a bank. There was just a lot of change for about 3 years there. And I did a little stint in retail to see what that looked like. I didn't like that part of things. So then I went back and ended up working for another local bank. I still just it never felt right. It never felt like it did when I was a broker. And so, at that time, I guess, was when brokerages were starting, people were starting to get back into the mortgage broker world. It became a little bit more friendly than it had been over the past several years, because of course we took the blame for all of the mortgage crisis for the most part. And so I had friends around me that were opening their own companies, and I was like, I think I can do this. And I truly was at a crossroads, because I just wasn't happy at the bank. This was when I was still coming out of that postpartum depression and everything. And so it was really hard to say, hey, you know what? Believe in yourself. You can do this. Open your own company. But I knew that if I didn't, that I could possibly get out of mortgages altogether. And I didn't want to do that, because I truly loved what I did. And so I opened up my own brokerage, and it was like the perfect storm. I got in, I fell in love with what I was doing again, and it was my own. And so I could create it to look like what I wanted it to look like. I didn't have to answer to a big board of, shareholders and things like that. I didn't have layers and layers of management above me that were trying to scrutinize how I did this, or, why I did this. And this is what our process is, and you can't do it this way. And so I absolutely loved it. And then about 2 months or so after I opened up the company, my broker that I had originally worked for called me and said, hey, if you'll get me a laptop and some health insurance and stuff, he was like, I'll come over there and work with you. And I was like, what is going on right now? So we truly came full circle, and it's essentially back to the way it was when I got into the business. But now I'm the one who has all of the extra work with paperwork and payroll and compliance, and he's working for me, and his son is on board with us as well, and I absolutely love it. But it was a journey to get to where I am. So it's so easy to look at people and you meet them today, and it's like, oh, this is what they do, and this is what they've always done. But just like life, my mortgage journey was there was a lot of ups and downs and hills to climb. And so where I am today is not where it started. So it's so easy to compare where someone else is today with where you are today, right? But you're looking at the end of, or not the end of the journey. You're looking at like the middle of the journey for me, whereas somebody may be starting out, and that's not what it looked like when I started out, but I wouldn't change it.
High aspirations, which is
you said it. You said it. You said you get to decide who you are, right?
Yeah.
And that's some pretty powerful stuff. And I think I always say you either have it or you don't. And I call them intangible traits. And that's what, when I hear about postpartum depression, I hear about, moving back and forth and, the crash and everything. You have these intangible traits that you can't really explain sometimes. I sit to myself sometimes and say, how did I make it through the crash and how did I stay in the business? And I just can't explain it. It was just something inside me. And I could tell by talking to you that you have it. And I always say to people, if I have to tell you what it is, you don't have it and you don't get it. And to the fact that somebody that you worked for goes, a few years, go by and they want to work for you, that says a lot about who you are as a person and who you are as a leader, because you could have let all of those setbacks define you. You could have said, oh, I got postpartum depression. I'm throwing the towel in. I'm going to just, stay at home or whatever. I can't go out and face all of these issues. But that is really, something that, Les Brown said the other day was live your life the way you want to leave it. And so far you have done that. And it's really impressive that anyone listening should listen to what Michelle has overcome and where she is today and where she's going, because I can only think she's going to get bigger and better. And if there is a setback, it's not a setback. It's just something that she has to step over. Those are the qualities that make great leadership. And I think this started out as a wholesale conversation. And after episode 1, we've established it's more about leadership and about quality of leaders. And I think you exemplify that failure is not a reason to throw your hands up and quit. It's just, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to get around it. I'm going to keep moving. And that's what's impressive to me. And even hearing about the way that you make time, and it doesn't matter, I love that Christine says, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, as long as you're at the table for the right reasons. But even this I have one child that's involved in a lot of activities. You have 3 right now. And I can't imagine running your own company, showing up for soccer practice, going to the games. And we all know a lot of borrowers are needy. They want you 24/7. You got to run back and forth to work. I mean, I can't do it with 1. So how do you do it with 3? I can't imagine.
Honestly, without my husband, there's no way I would be able to do it. So when I first opened up my company, I was thinking like, I'll just do like a few loans and this is what it will look like. And then of course, when Steve and Josh came on board too, I was like, oh, wow, we're doing a lot more. It's a lot busier now. Then of course, rates start crashing. We have COVID, the market's insane. And it got to the point where it was like, I can't leave every single time that like the school calls and somebody says I'm sick. Like, I can, and I would and did, but I essentially like begged my husband for months. Like he would come home at the end of the day and I'm still sitting in the living room or in the dining room or just wherever to be able to work and get stuff done. And I kept saying to him, I was like, hey, why don't you quit your job and you can just help me with things at the company and help with the kids. And then if I don't have to jump up and leave unexpectedly, I'm going to be able to get more done. And, it was kind of a joke in the beginning. And then finally one day he was like, you're serious about this, aren't you? And I was like, yes, I'm very serious about this. And so him leaving and deciding to come and like help me with some stuff here and then just help be a super dad it was probably one of the biggest like ways that someone has ever shown up for me in my life. Not only because, obviously he's my husband and he backs me and he cares about me and everything that we build is for our family and our future. But for him to have the belief in me that what I was doing was going to be successful enough for him to step away from a career that he had been in for 20 years and had a lot of safety nets. And he had a great career. It meant the world to me. And because it gave me the ability to truly run with my career. Whereas before, not that I wasn't running, but it didn't matter how fast you were going and how good you were getting at any given moment. You could have, like I said, you could have the school call and say, hey, so-and-so's sick today. We need you to come pick them up. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh gosh, all of my plans for today are out the window because I've got to leave. And so once that was kind of eliminated from life and he was able to come over with me, that's when things, I would say like life got a lot more easy to manage and balance at that point, because I knew I always had him, to back me up, and I had that support from him. And so that's truly how I'm able to do it all, is because of him and the belief that he had and the support that he had for us and just the trust that he had, and that's been the difference maker for me, I believe.
Wow. Yeah, I think Chris Gordon said something great. He said having a strong team at home allows you the opportunity to build a strong team at work. So that is so true. I think, Chris, maybe you can call my wife and explain that to her, and maybe I could figure out. I still have to explain to my wife what I do for a living, at least once a week. She doesn't understand wholesale lending at all, so it's always very interesting to me. She's a school teacher. It's pretty cut and dry. So
yeah, but it's so true. I mean, you don't realize how much support and stuff that you need when you're literally just like plowing through the chaos every day. And having 3 kids, I mean, so our oldest is now 15, and then we have a 9-year-old, and then my daughter will be 8 in August. So having the 2 little ones so close together, I mean, for probably a 4-year window, I don't feel like we slept. It was constant. It was just constant chaos that we were battling in our personal life. And all of that bleeds over into work, And so once, obviously, them getting older has definitely helped as well. But it's finding a balance to the chaos was crucial, and couldn't have come at a better time. It's funny because COVID, there's like this whole thing like, oh, COVID was awful, COVID was terrible. But there were so many good, positive changes that happened in our life personally and professionally during that time frame that, like, if somebody said, hey, we're going to do another 2-week shutdown and everybody's going to stay at home, like, I would actually kind of get a little bit giddy about that, because I actually really enjoyed that time and the personal growth that we had from it.
Right. You had a great quote, Michelle, and you said, you control the narrative of your own failures.
Yep.
What's the message behind that you could share with the audience?
I mean, honestly, I think that we're all human at the end of the day, right? And so we live in this social media world where everybody only puts out the perfect side of them, and they edit their pictures so that they look right. And they're not going to take a picture of their messy kitchen because they don't want people to see that. And we have the power we are the authors of our own story. And so we can share all of it, none of it, some of it. But I feel like when we are more vulnerable and we do share not only our failures, but, our successes and more of our, like, the true side of our story, that's when people, like, we become more relatable. Like, we're still human at the end of the day. And, like, I never want somebody to be working with me or walk into my office and feel intimidated in any way, or that they're being judged by this person over here that has all this, like, power to decide, my financial future and stuff. I want them to always realize that I'm a human just like them. I wake up in the morning, I put my pants on one leg at a time, but I've been through a lot of stuff too. And so when we share that story, when we become more vulnerable, that's when we connect with more people. And I think people are so afraid to do it in this little perfect social media world that we live in now. But the more that we do it, the more our story is able to touch other people, the more relatable we become. And I think it's crucial. And I hope that at some point more people start to embrace that and realize that they don't have to be perfect all the time. And, but it's hard. I mean, I sit here and I say that, but I still meet people face to face, all the time. And they're like, oh, like, you're so different than I expected. And it's hard. I mean, when all you see is like a headshot and this, and it's all business all the time. I mean, that's not all of who I am. I'm still a mom. I still like to have fun.
It took me 15 years. It really, I mean, Kenny will tell you, I mean, I've never shared it. It's funny. I was on the golf course the other day and someone said, give me the short version of your life. I want your life story. And I gave him the toughest part of my story and who he sees me today. And you're right, Mike. Vulnerability is not a weakness. It's the greatest measure of courage.
I love Brene Brown.
It took a lot for me to say that. And I've never told that story. I'm like, come from a single mom, didn't have it easy. I worked my ass off. I overcome a lot of obstacles. I could have been a school teacher. I decided I didn't like kids. Now I have one. But anyway, now you see me in these nice clothes and this car, and you think that's always been me. Right. I struggled more than you could imagine, but it took me 50 years to be comfortable telling that story.
Right.
So you're spot on. It takes a lot of courage sometimes. And I get
right
nervous about saying it. Will they think less of me if they know who I am?
Right. Well, just like, the quote that just popped up, like most people think that being vulnerable is a weakness, but not only what I have learned, but what I see is that the people that are the most vulnerable are the ones that are strongest typically, because they know, like, they're not afraid to share that story.
Right.
They're not afraid to share those vulnerable sides because they know where they are now. They know what they've come through. And to me, vulnerability it's an indicator of strength inside of someone. And I wish everybody could like read Brene Brown or work with Renee Rodriguez and just all these people that really encourage you to be vulnerable with other people, because it truly is a sign of strength. So I applaud you, Kevin, for getting to that point where you felt, happy and comfortable and safe sharing your own story, because more people need to hear it.
Oh, absolutely. I tell you, I love doing the podcast. It's really about life. It's not just about business. And as I did the research about you, you said something and talk about being vulnerable. I'm going through a divorce right now in my life. And you said something that hit home, which I was always afraid of. And it said, kids deserve happy parents.
Yep. And it's true. And
not just functionality. So it's amazing that you said that. And I picked that up. And, I said, what? I really need to talk about it. And thank you for sharing that, because it's definitely something that's, was important to me and something I was afraid of. So.
Yeah. And, and it's funny because I think so many people are worried about how divorce is going to impact their kids. And it is a concern, right? But your kids are going to see you and your wife come out of it. And hopefully you do get to a place where you are incredibly happy. And when you're in a home that's filled with tension and, fighting and arguing, it impacts our kids in so many ways that we don't understand. But like, our job as parents is not to just raise great kids. Like, we need to be able to raise great kids that then go out into the world and become great adults. And so often we mimic the lifestyle that we grew up in. And if it was, you can just tell with the way that some kids and people talk to other people that something happened in their life and they were taught to act that way. And they were taught to, that was what they saw. And that was the behavior that they mimicked. But when you have happy parents, it's like, it's an injection of like happiness into their own life, and so do I think that a lot of people should just go out and get divorced to get happy? No. Absolutely not. But if that's, if that is what it comes down to, then it's like you have this whole new level of hope to strive for. And it's reaching that point where your kids see that you're happy. They see that their mom is happy. They see that their dad is happy, even if they're not together, because at the end of the day, that's going to give them more stability than two parents that are living in a household fighting that, don't truly love each other anymore. And to be able to live and grow up in a home that is full of happiness and love, even if it's two separate homes, that's okay. And yeah, it's just another part of sharing the story and being vulnerable. So I wish you all the best with that. And I know you'll get to that point too.
Appreciate it. I think we're getting to the final question, the staple question of the podcast. It's about value and how you define your value in the marketplace.
God, that's a great question. Honestly, I think that for me, I'm just different. People that come across my desk and applications, it's not just another number. It's not just another set of facts and data to put in and try to get this loan approved. I truly do care about everybody that I come into contact with. And I want to not only give them the best service that they can get, but put them into a really great loan. And I'm very hyper local, community-based lender. So I know that I'm going to run into these people in the grocery store one day, probably. I may run into them at church, at school functions and things like that. And I'm not going to let them down because of that. And I think that there's a big difference when you're working with, I'm boots on the ground. If somebody has, something they need to come into my office and talk to me, come on in. But when you're working with someone online or across the country, you just don't have that same accountability in a sense. Because like I said, I know, and I tell everybody, you don't ever have to walk into my office and we may meet at the closing table, but if you want to show up any day, come on, I'm here. And I like being able to give people that sense of security and knowing that not only can they get to know me, that I'm not going anywhere. So we're going to do this loan. And then I want to do every future loan that you ever do as well. After that, I want you to refer me, your friends and family. But where is that going to come from? It's going to come from first giving you great service and taking care of you. And I do it because, like I said, I know, I can't just drop the ball on somebody. Like some of these big companies do from time to time, because I'm going to see these people. I'm going to continue to work with them over and over and over. And I never want that to be, the reputation that precedes me. When people in my market get a pre-approval letter from me, I want them to know that it's not only reliable, it's strong, I'm local, and it does help. And I think part of being in the South, I think that it's a little bit different here than in some places, but I wouldn't change it for the world. But I think that that's where my value is different, is that I'm not, I don't treat my customers just like another number, because they're not. They're human, and they want somebody that cares about them, because it's a major, any transaction you do when it comes to real estate, it's always a major transaction in your life.
No, I agree. The one thing you don't want to be in the grocery store and someone bumps into your cart and says, Michelle, you're supposed to call me back yesterday. So
and look, and I'm human. Things happen, but I can also own that, and I'm not afraid to do that. So, I'm not saying I'm perfect and that, mistakes never happen and things like that. But at the end of the day, like, I'm always going to either try to make it better or, own up to my failures, because that's how we get better. That's how we grow.
Well, I'm sorry for everyone for going over, but I mean, it was just a conversation. That's what's great about this. It's a real conversation about real people that share things that they've been through and how they become successful, and that's what I want people to get out of this. When you're having a bad day, listen to this, because we've all had bad days, but we've all come out the other side of it. It's funny you mentioned, in the beginning, Vet VA. Next week we'll have on, Nathan Nottingham and Chris Griffin.
Two of my favorite humans.
Yeah, I'm excited to go to their VA summer camp and shoot big guns. I'm very, as you can tell by the way I dress, I'm going to be very excited for this.
You don't have to wear a suit that day.
No, right. I don't know where I'm going to get camo, but I will find some. But I really thank you, Michelle, for joining us today. Thank you for sharing.
Thank y'all for having me.
I thank you for sharing your story to help me share my story. The same way with Christine Beckwith, the same way with Chris Gordon, all the people that have been on, TJ Curran. I think of all of these people that have been on.
Anthony Casa,
Jamie Cavanaugh. Yeah. They've shared. I mean, Anthony's story is mind blowing. I never knew that about him. Yep. So all of those were great shares to allow people to share that no matter what you are going through, you could come out the other side and be successful. It doesn't mean that it will always be a calm waters. You might run into another storm, but if you can get through that storm, it's smooth sailing.
That's right. That's right.
So thank you so much. And as always, if you enjoyed the podcast, you can visit us at EPM Wholesale. You can visit us at EPM Brokers on LinkedIn. I'm probably giving all the wrong places to go, but I wanted it to be natural. So this is natural as it gets. But if you have any questions, email kphillips@epm.net, kevin@epm.net. I'm sure Michelle wouldn't have a problem you reaching out to her. Never. If you're having a tough time right now and you just want someone to talk to, we're all here because we all want to help everyone get to where we are and where we're going. So, I think that's, again, thanks. I really didn't expect it to go over this long. We will keep it at 30 minutes, but it's a real story and it's a real conversation. And you can't put a timer on that. So, Michelle, thank you so much.
Thank y'all so much for having me. Fun chatting with you. And I think so. All the Atlanta stuff just kind of got dropped on my plate and found out about it. But I'm really gonna do everything I can to be out there and hopefully get to hang with y'all a little bit more soon.
Yes, July 28th and 29th in Atlanta, we're having an EPM wholesale event where we're gonna help our brokers with all the resources we can provide to them, improve. And we'll also have Tim Grover speaking as well, who wrote Winning, which I read yesterday in the flight home. Very good book.
He's amazing.
Yeah, it was good stuff. But thank you again.
Awesome. Thank y'all, guys. Have a great weekend. Happy 4th and
same to you.
Stay safe.
Thanks.